I used to think my family was the kind you'd see in those old photo albums. Smiling faces, backyard barbecues, Christmas mornings full of laughter. The kind of normal that made other people jealous. But sometimes, the pictures lie. And sometimes the truth sitting behind those smiles is so twisted, it makes you question everything you ever believed. My name's Ethan Parker. I'm 28 years old, and up until last year, I thought my life was fine. Not perfect, but comfortable. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a modest home with my mom, dad, and older sister, Rachel. Dad ran a small construction company. Mom was a high school guidance counselor, and Rachel was the golden child. Straight A's, prom queen, full-ride scholarship to UCLA. Me? I was the quiet kid, the one who fixed things, stayed out of drama, and believed that family meant loyalty. But that illusion shattered last Thanksgiving. It started small, almost nothing really. A comment, a weird glance. But that's the thing about lies. Once you catch the first thread, the whole fabric starts to come apart. It was Thanksgiving morning, and like every year, I drove home from the city to have dinner with my parents. The air was crisp, the sky dull and gray, the kind of Oregon weather that made you want to stay inside with a warm drink. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Rachel's car already parked there. She'd come in from California. And honestly, I was happy to see her. We weren't super close anymore, life happens, but I still loved her. When I walked in, Mom was in the kitchen, apron on, humming along to some country song playing on the radio. She turned when she heard the door. "Ethan, oh honey, look at you," she said, smiling. "You've lost weight. Are you eating enough?" I laughed. "Hi, Mom. Yes, I'm eating fine." Dad came out of the dining room, wiping his hands on a towel. "There's my boy," he said, pulling me into one of those awkward dad hugs that felt both warm and stiff at the same time. Everything looked normal. The turkey was roasting, the house smelled like cinnamon and butter, and Rachel was setting the table while sipping wine. She looked good, at least that's what I thought. During dinner, the conversation flowed like it always did. Mom talking about work, Dad bragging about Rachel's promotion, Rachel teasing me about being single. Normal stuff. But when Dad got up to grab another bottle of wine, I noticed something strange. Rachel's face changed. She looked at Mom with this look. Not anger, not sadness, but something I couldn't quite read. Mom avoided her gaze, busying herself with mashed potatoes. I might have ignored it, if not for what happened later that night. After dinner, we all gathered in the living room. The fire crackled, and Dad turned on some old home videos. It's a tradition. Every year we rewatch clips from when Rachel and I were kids. There was one video I hadn't seen before. It was labeled Summer '98. On the screen, I saw Dad recording Rachel's 5th birthday. Mom was behind the camera, laughing, her voice soft and sweet. But then, the camera panned for a second too long and caught something in the background. A man standing by the fence, watching us. He wasn't a neighbor. I didn't recognize him. But Mom did. Because the moment he appeared on screen, her whole expression changed. "Hey, can we turn this off?" she said quickly, almost panicked. Dad frowned. "What? Why? It's just a video." She started, but Rachel cut in. "Yeah, Mom. Why don't you tell us why you don't want us to see it?" The room fell silent. Dad looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Mom stood up. "Nothing. It's nothing." But Rachel laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh. It was sharp.
Bitter. Oh, it's something. It's definitely something. That was the first crack. The moment everything started to break. The rest of the night was awkward. Rachel left early, claiming she had to meet a friend, and Mom went to bed without saying goodnight. Dad and I stayed up, both pretending we weren't wondering what the hell just happened. The next morning, I texted Rachel. Me. "Hey, what was that about last night?" Rachel. "You should ask Mom." That was it. No explanation. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the weird feeling in my gut. So I did what any normal person would do. I started digging. At first, it was just old photo albums, home videos, random memories. But then I noticed something odd. There were whole months missing from our family albums. No pictures of Mom from 1998 to mid-1999. And the more I looked, the more I realized she'd carefully removed certain photos. Why? Then I found it. In the attic, inside an old box labeled Rachel's school stuff, I found an envelope. No name, no return address, just a date written on the corner. June 1998. Inside were three things. A photo of Mom and the man from the video, standing by that same backyard fence holding hands. A handwritten note that said, "He deserves to know." And a hospital bracelet. The patient name? Rachel Parker. I didn't know what to make of it. Rachel's name on a hospital bracelet, Mom with another man, a cryptic message. What did it mean? I didn't sleep that night. My mind was spinning. By morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I drove straight to my parents' house, still holding the envelope. Mom was in the kitchen, like always. When she saw me, her smile faded. "Ethan? What's wrong?" I dropped the envelope on the counter. "What is this?" She froze. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. "Where did you find this?" "In the attic. In Rachel's box." She sat down slowly. "You shouldn't have seen that." "Yeah, well, I did. So who's the guy, and what does this mean?" She looked at me for a long time, her eyes glossy. "It's complicated." "Then simplify it." She sighed. "That man, his name was Daniel. He was..." Before she could finish, the front door opened. Dad walked in, carrying groceries. He looked between us, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" he asked. Mom stood up quickly, hiding the photo behind her back. "Nothing, honey. Just..." But I cut her off. "Who's Daniel, Dad?" He blinked. "Daniel who?" "Ask Mom." Dad looked at her, confused, then at me. "Ethan, what is this about?" Mom's face went pale. "Please, not now." But I was done with the secrets. I pulled out the photo and slammed it on the table. This is what it's about." Dad stared at it. His jaw tightened. "Where did you get this? Does it matter? Just tell me what's going on." For a moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Then, Mom whispered, barely audible, "He's Rachel's biological father." And just like that, the world tilted. Dad just stood there, frozen. Then he laughed, this hollow, broken sound. I always knew it. I just didn't want to believe it. Mom started crying. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to..." But he walked away, straight out the door. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. My throat felt tight. Rachel's biological father? What about me? Did that mean... "Mom," I said slowly, "is Dad my real father?" She looked at me then, and I'll never forget her face. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no. She just whispered, "You both deserved better." That was the moment I realized everything I knew about my family was a lie. I didn't go back home for days after that conversation. My phone kept buzzing with calls from Mom, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I didn't even know what to say. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture. Mom holding hands with that man, smiling like she was living another life. And her words echoed in my head over and over again. "You both deserved better." I tried to make sense of it all, but nothing fit. My whole life, I'd seen my parents as the kind of couple who made it work through everything. Dad used to kiss Mom on the forehead every morning before work. They'd go on walks after dinner, talk about TV shows like an old married couple should. Was all of that fake? Was my entire childhood built on a lie? By the third day, I finally picked up the phone when Rachel called. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, "you found it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "I knew you would eventually," she said after a pause. "Mom's been hiding the truth for years." "What truth?" I snapped. "That Dad isn't really her father, or that Mom cheated on him?" "It's not just that," Rachel said quietly. "It's worse." That got my attention. "Rachel, what do you mean worse?" She sighed, and for the first time, her voice shook a little. "I can't talk about it over the phone. Just meet me. Tomorrow. At the old park by the high school." Before I could say anything else, she hung up. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying everything. Mom's panicked face, Dad's silence, that old home video. I even started to wonder if maybe Rachel knew all along and had been keeping it from me too. The next morning I drove to the park. The sky was overcast and the air smelled like rain. Rachel was already there, sitting on one of the old wooden benches, staring at the empty playground. When I walked up, she didn't even look at me. "You remember when we used to come here every Saturday?" she said. "Dad would bring us after his shifts. We'd eat ice cream on that hill." "Yeah," I said quietly. "That was before everything got complicated." She nodded, her eyes distant. "You want to know the truth? Fine. Mom had an affair. But it wasn't just once, Ethan. It lasted for years. Daniel wasn't just some random guy. He was Dad's best friend." My stomach dropped. "What?" She turned to me, her eyes wet but steady. "They worked together. Daniel was the foreman at Dad's construction company back then. He came over all the time for dinner. You remember him, you just don't remember his face." I shook my head. "No, that's impossible. I'd remember something like that." "You were 5. You were too young to notice, but I remember. I used to see them talking in the kitchen late at night when Dad was out on a job. I didn't understand what it meant back then, but later I figured it out." I felt sick. "How long have you known?" "For years," she admitted. "But I didn't want to tell you. I thought maybe it was better if you never knew. But then that video came up last Thanksgiving and I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Dad doesn't know she was with his best friend?" Rachel looked away. "He does now." I sank onto the bench beside her, my hands trembling. "Jesus Christ, Rachel, how did this even happen?" "I don't know," she said. "Mom said she was lonely, that Dad worked all the time, that she felt invisible. Daniel was around and one thing led to another. Typical story." "Typical story," I snapped. "You're acting like this is normal, like it's no big deal." She flinched. "Don't do that, Ethan. Don't put this on me. I didn't choose any of this." I took a breath, realizing I was taking my anger out on the wrong person. "Sorry," I muttered. I don't get it. Why keep it secret for all these years?" Rachel hesitated. "Because it's not just about me." "What does that mean?" She looked at me, her eyes full of something I couldn't read. Fear, maybe. "Ethan, there's a chance Dad isn't your real father either." I stared at her, unable to process what she just said. "What?" She bit her lip. "After I found out about Daniel, I confronted Mom. I wanted to know the truth. She told me she only cheated once, that it was a mistake, that Dad was definitely your father. But then I found an old letter, one Daniel and Mom had written to each other a long time ago.
Daniel sent her years after I was born. In it, he mentioned something about the second child. He said he hoped she would tell the truth someday. I didn't understand it at first, but..." She trailed off, her voice breaking. "But what?" I demanded. She pulled something from her bag. It was an old envelope, yellowed and torn. She handed it to me. Inside was a letter written in faded ink. "Anna," it read, "I know we can't change the past, but if what you told me is true, if Ethan really might be mine, Then I need to know. Please don't shut me out again. I deserve to know my son. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I looked up at Rachel. You're saying... She nodded. Yeah. There's a chance Daniel was your father too. The world felt like it tilted again, just like it did the day before. My hands went cold. I wanted to throw the letter away, burn it, pretend I never saw it. But it was right there, written proof. Everything I thought I knew, my parents' marriage, my childhood, even who I was, felt fake, manufactured, built on a lie. I need to talk to Mom, I said finally. Rachel sighed. You can try, but she won't tell you the truth. She's been hiding this for decades. You think she'll come clean now? She has to, I said. I deserve to know who I am. That night, I went back to my parents' house. Dad's truck wasn't in the driveway. Mom was alone, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for hours. Ethan, she said softly, I didn't think you'd come back. I need answers. Real ones. She nodded slowly. I figured you would. I placed the letter on the table. Did Daniel write this? Her face went white. Where did you get that? Rachel gave it to me. Is it true? Is there a chance he's my father? Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't answer right away. She just looked down at her coffee cup like it held the solution to everything. Mom, I said, my voice shaking, please, I just need the truth. Finally, she whispered, I don't know. I froze. What do you mean you don't know? Her voice cracked. Because I was with both of them around that time. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Both of them? She nodded. It was a terrible time. Your father and I were fighting constantly. Daniel was there, and I made a mistake. I thought it was just once, but then it wasn't. I don't even know which of them. She covered her face with her hands. I was so ashamed, Ethan. I didn't want to destroy our family. I felt something inside me break. So you lied to all of us, for decades. I did what I thought was best, she said weakly. I didn't want to lose your father. I didn't want you kids to grow up in a broken home. But we did, I said quietly. You just didn't tell us it was broken. She started to cry again, whispering apologies that meant nothing to me. I just stood there, numb. The walls of that house suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. I walked out without saying another word. When I got in my car, I saw Dad's truck pulling up. He got out, looked at me, and I could see it in his eyes. He knew. Somehow he already knew everything. Son, he said quietly, don't let her destroy you like she did me. Then he walked past me, into the house. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I just drove. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. As I drove down the dark road, the rain started to fall, blurring the lights ahead of me. My phone buzzed again. It was Rachel. But this time, I didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close.
I didn't sleep that night. I drove for hours just trying to clear my head, but no matter how far I went, I couldn't escape the noise in my mind. Every mile felt heavier. Every thought twisted deeper. It was like I was driving away from the only version of myself I'd ever known, and I had no idea who was left. I stopped at a cheap motel off the interstate sometime around 3 a.m. The rain had stopped, but the smell of wet asphalt still hung in the air. I sat in the car for a long time before going in, staring at my reflection in the window. My face looked older, harder, like I'd aged a decade overnight. Inside the room, I just sat on the bed, staring at the wall. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I couldn't. Every time I thought of Mom's face or Dad's voice, I felt this burning mix of anger and heartbreak that I didn't know how to handle. I wanted to scream, but there was no one to hear me. When morning came, I checked my phone. 15 missed calls from Rachel, 2 from Mom, 1 from Dad.
No voicemails. I deleted them all without listening. For the next few days, I stayed at that motel, calling in sick to work, pretending to be someone who didn't have a past. But the world doesn't let you stay numb forever. On the third day, Rachel showed up. I heard a knock, and when I opened the door, there she was, eyes puffy, wearing one of Dad's old hoodies, hair a mess. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like she was searching for something in my face. "Ethan?" she said, finally, her voice cracking. "Dad's gone." I felt the words hit me like a punch. "What do you mean, gone?" "He left," she whispered. "He packed a bag, took his truck, and just left. Mom's been calling everyone, but no one's seen him." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Did he say anything before he left?" She nodded weakly. "He told Mom that he couldn't stand that house anymore, that every corner of it felt like a lie." I sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to process it. God. Rachel sat beside me, her hands shaking. "I don't think he's coming back, Ethan." I rubbed my face. This is all so messed up. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Dad left something for you. A note." I hesitated before reaching for it. The paper was folded twice, staying like he'd been holding it for a while. His handwriting was rough, but familiar. "Ethan, I didn't want you to find out this way. I've loved you since the day you were born, and that doesn't change because of a test. Blood doesn't make a father, son. Love does. But I can't live in a house built on lies. You'll always be my boy, but I need to find myself again. Maybe someday, when you're ready, we can talk. Until then, take care of your sister. She'll need you now more than ever." I stared at the words for what felt like forever. My hands trembled as I folded it back up. "I can't do this," I said quietly. "I can't fix this family."
Rachel wiped her tears. "I'm not asking you to fix it. I just don't want to lose you, too." I looked at her then. Really looked at her. She was broken in her own way, caught between loyalty and truth, guilt and fear. I realized she'd been carrying this longer than I had. "I need time," I said finally. She nodded. "I get it." After she left, I sat there for hours, just staring at Dad's note. I read it over and over until the words blurred. Part of me wanted to believe him, that love mattered more than blood. But another part of me couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, the man who'd caused all of this, the man who might actually be my father. I had his name. I knew he used to live nearby. I also knew he ran another construction company in town years ago before disappearing. I didn't know if he was still alive, but I knew I had to find him. The next morning I started digging. Old business listings, archived addresses, Facebook profiles. It took hours, but eventually I found something. An old property record from 2015 listing a Daniel Cole in Salem, Oregon, about an hour south. I sat staring at the screen for a long time before grabbing my keys. When I pulled up to the address, it was a rundown house on a quiet street, the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. The lawn was overgrown, the paint peeling, the mailbox hanging by one screw. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. After a moment, the door opened. An older man stood there. Gray hair, rough hands, tired eyes. He looked surprised to see me. "Can I help you?" he asked. My mouth went dry. "Are you Daniel Cole?" He hesitated. "Who's asking?" "My name's Ethan Parker," I said. "I think you might be my father." For a moment he didn't move.
Then his face changed, like he'd seen a ghost. He opened the door wider. "Come in." I stepped inside. The house smelled like sawdust and old coffee. There were photos on the wall, some of construction sites, some of a younger Daniel holding trophies or standing with coworkers. But one caught my eye. A photo of my mother. He noticed me staring. "That was a long time ago," he said quietly. I turned to face him. "You knew she'd never tell me, didn't you?" He sighed, sinking into an old recliner. "I hoped she would, but Anna always cared more about keeping things tidy than telling the truth." "Did you love her?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "Yeah, I did. More than I should have. But I was her mistake, not her choice." "Why didn't you fight for us? For me?" "You think I didn't try? She told me to stay away, said it was for the best, said you'd be better off with him." I didn't know what to say. He leaned forward, his eyes wet now. "When I saw that video years ago, I wanted to run to you, tell you who I was, but she made me promise I wouldn't. Said it would destroy everything, and she was right. Look what happened." The room fell silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. "Do you really think you're my father?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I always felt it, but feelings don't count for much without proof." "I have proof," I said quietly. "A DNA test. It says the man who raised me isn't my biological father." He looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Then I guess that makes me your old man, doesn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. For the first time in my life, I was looking at the man who might have given me half my DNA, and I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not connection, just emptiness. He reached out a hand. "Ethan," but I couldn't take it. I stood up, stepping back. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. Before he could say anything else, I walked out. The air outside was cold. My head was spinning. I'd gotten the truth I wanted, but it didn't feel like closure. It just felt heavier. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "Mom's in the hospital. Call me now."
I drove straight to the hospital. I don't even remember half the drive there. Just red lights, wet roads, and the sound of my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. My phone buzzed again and again with Rachel's calls, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. All I could think about was Mom lying somewhere behind those white walls, maybe hooked up to machines, maybe... I didn't even want to finish the thought. When I finally pulled into the hospital parking lot, the sun was setting, that pale orange light fading fast over the lot. I ran through the sliding glass doors, breathless, scanning for Rachel. I spotted her near the waiting area, sitting hunched over in one of those uncomfortable blue chairs, her head buried in her hands. She looked up when she heard me. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears. "Ethan, what happened?" I asked, my voice cracking. "She collapsed," she said, standing up, "right after I told her Dad was gone. The stress, the guilt, it just got to her. Is she... She's alive," Rachel said quickly, "but she's not doing well. Her heart..." She trailed off, taking a shaky breath. "They're running tests." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Can I see her?" "Yeah, room 214. I didn't wait. I walked down that long hallway, my steps echoing off the sterile tile floors. Everything smelled like bleach and hand sanitizer, the kind of smell that seeps into your clothes and stays with you. When I opened the door, the sight stopped me cold. Mom was lying in bed, pale and fragile, a thin oxygen tube under her nose. The woman who used to command every room she entered now looked small, almost hollow. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard me. "Ethan," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Hey, Mom." She'd tried to smile, but it barely reached her eyes. "You came." "Of course I did." There was silence for a moment, just the quiet beep of a heart monitor. "You found him, didn't you?" she asked softly. I hesitated. "Yeah, I did." Her eyes filled with tears. "What did he say?" "That you made him promise to stay away, that you thought it was for the best." She turned her head slightly, looking toward the window. "It was supposed to protect you," she said. "I didn't want you to grow up with confusion, resentment. I thought I was doing the right thing." "The right thing?" I said, my voice rising before I could stop it. "You lied to me for 30 years, Mom. You let me love a man who wasn't my father. You let him raise me. You let him believe that I was his son." Her voice broke. "Because I wanted you to have a father who stayed." That hit harder than I expected. The pain in her voice wasn't fake. It was raw, desperate. She wiped at her eyes weakly. "Daniel was never going to stay. He was married. He had another life. I was a mistake he made one summer, and I knew it. When I found out I was pregnant, I went to him. He begged me to keep it quiet. I told him I couldn't raise you alone. And then your father, Robert, he stepped up. He said he didn't care. He loved me. He wanted a family, and he said you'd be his son no matter what. I believed him." I felt my throat tighten. "And when did you plan on telling me? Ever?" She looked at me with tired eyes. "I didn't think I had to. You had a good life, Ethan. You were happy. I thought the truth would only destroy that." "Well, it did anyway." She looked away again, tears rolling down her temples. "I know." For a long moment, we just sat in silence. The sound of the monitor beeped steadily between us. Then she said, "Your father, Robert, he left because of me, not you. Don't blame yourself. Please don't." I clenched my fists. I don't even know who I'm supposed to blame anymore. She reached for my hand, her fingers cold. "Blame me. But don't hate him. He loved you like his own. He always did." I wanted to believe that. I really did. After a while, Rachel came in quietly, and Mom drifted off to sleep. I stood by the window, watching the lights of the city blur.
"Rain. She's not going to last long, is she?" I said without turning. Rachel shook her head. "They don't think so. Her heart's weak. The stress is too much." I rubbed my face. "Dad should know." She frowned. "You think he'd come back?" "I don't know, but he deserves the chance." Later that night, I drove back to my motel, exhausted but unable to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. Dad's number was still there, but my thumb hovered over it for what felt like an hour before I finally pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Ethan?" His voice was quiet, cautious. "Dad," I said, the word catching in my throat. "It's Mom. She's in the hospital. It's bad." There was a long silence on the other end. "Which hospital?" he finally asked. When I told him, he didn't say another word, just hung up. The next morning, when I walked into Mom's room, he was already there. He stood by the bed, looking at her like she was both the love of his life and the ghost that haunted him. Rachel was asleep in the chair beside her. He looked older, somehow smaller than I remembered. He turned when he saw me. "Ethan?" I nodded. "You came." "I had to," he said quietly. We stood in silence for a moment, both watching her sleep.
She told me everything, I said finally. He nodded. I figured she would. You still love her? He gave a sad smile. I don't think love just turns off, even after all this. I nodded slowly. She said you loved me like your own. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. That's because you are my own, Ethan. I don't care what that test says. I raised you. I taught you how to ride a bike. I stayed up with you when you had the flu. I'm your father, and nothing changes that. My chest tightened, and I had to look away. I want to believe that. Then do, he said. Don't let her mistake take everything good away from you. Before I could respond, Mom stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw him, her lips trembled. Robert? He moved closer, taking her hand gently. Hey, Anna. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered. I almost didn't, he said. But then I remembered what we built together. What we almost lost. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Robert. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, he said softly, and I forgive you. I felt my throat tighten again. Rachel was awake now too, quietly crying in the corner. For the next few minutes, we all just sat there, no shouting, no accusations, just silence and forgiveness hanging in the air like something fragile. Mom reached for my hand again, then Rachel's. Promise me you'll both stay close, she whispered, no matter what happens. We both nodded, tears falling freely. I love you, she said, barely audible now. I love you too, Mom. And then, as the monitor beeped slower and slower, her hand went still in mine. The sound that followed, the flat, endless tone, will never leave me. Rachel sobbed into Dad's shoulder. I just stood there, frozen, holding onto her hand long after the nurses came in. That night, the three of us sat outside the hospital under the flickering streetlights, not saying a word. There was nothing left to say. After a long silence, Dad said quietly, "You should know. I got a message from Daniel." I turned. "What?" He nodded. "He said he wanted to see you again. Said he had something important to tell you." I frowned. "When?" "This morning, right before I came here." I looked out at the dark horizon, my stomach sinking. I had no idea what else there was to uncover, but something told me this wasn't over yet.
The funeral was 3 days later. It was small and quiet, just family and a few old neighbors who still remembered what our family used to look like before everything fell apart. The sky was gray that morning, and the wind carried this strange, heavy silence that made even the sound of the priest's voice seem far away. Mom looked peaceful in the casket, like she was finally resting after years of carrying secrets. Rachel stood beside me, holding my arm so tight her nails dug into my skin, but I didn't mind. I needed to feel something real, something that reminded me I was still here. Dad stood a few feet away, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He looked like a man who'd lost everything twice, once to betrayal and again to time. After the ceremony, people came up to say the usual things. "I'm so sorry. She was a wonderful woman. She's in a better place now." I nodded, smiled, said thank you. But none of it felt real. When it was over, everyone left except for me, Rachel, and Dad. We stood there, staring at her grave until the cemetery workers started lowering her down. That was it. That was the end of the woman who'd built our family on love and lies. Later that night, I sat in my car outside the old house, the one I grew up in, the one that now felt like a museum of ghosts. Dad was staying somewhere else, and Rachel had gone back to her apartment.
but I needed to be there one more time. I walked through each room slowly, the living room, the kitchen, my old bedroom. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I sat on the couch where we used to watch movies as a family, and I swear for a moment I could still hear Mom laughing from the kitchen. That's when my phone buzzed. A text. It was from an unknown number. "Ethan, it's Daniel. I'm sorry for your loss. Please meet me. There's something you need to know." There was an address attached, a small diner just outside of town. I sat there for a long time, staring at that message. Every part of me wanted to ignore it, to just leave the past buried with Mom. But something deep down told me I couldn't. Not yet. Not without hearing whatever it was he had to say. So I drove. The diner was half empty when I got there, the kind of place that hadn't changed since the 80s. Old vinyl booths, faded posters, the smell of burnt coffee and grease. I spotted him right away, sitting in a corner booth. Daniel Cole. He looked older than when I'd seen him last week, like the years had suddenly caught up to him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. "Ethan," he said quietly. I slid into the booth across from him. "You said you had something to tell me?" He took a long breath. "I heard about your mother. I'm so sorry." I didn't say anything. I wasn't here for sympathy. He looked down at his hands. "There's something I didn't tell you before. Something your mother didn't want you to know." I leaned forward slightly, my voice low. "What is it?" He hesitated, then looked up. "She didn't just keep me from you because I was married. She kept me away because I was dangerous to be around." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He rubbed his forehead. "I was into some bad stuff back then. Illegal deals, money laundering. The construction business gave me an excuse, but I was tied to people I shouldn't have been. When your mother got pregnant, she begged me to walk away from that life. I tried, but it was too late. The people I worked with."
He wouldn't let me go. She thought the safest thing for you was to grow up with someone who wasn't part of that world. I sat there, speechless. "So she wasn't protecting you from me because I didn't love you," he continued, his voice cracking. "She was protecting you from the mess I was in. And she was right to." My hands tightened around my coffee cup. "You're saying you were involved with criminals?" He nodded. "Yeah,